The Rep X Pepin dumbbells were possibly the most anticipated piece of gym equipment released last year. They're a collaboration between Rep Fitness and our very own homegrown fellow Canadian, David Pepin, out of Quebec. And I finally have my very own beautiful set after waiting a really long time. So while I was waiting, I sold my Iron Masters and picked up a set of Nuobells just to see what all the hype was about. Because these are probably the two most popular options right now, and after using them both, I can definitely see why. But before you go and take out a second mortgage just to afford a set of these, there are some issues I think you should know about. There's one thing I actually kind of hate, and one potential safety issue that I experienced. These are really different, but is one better? And are the Pepins worth the hefty price tag? Or is this just a case of FOMO over something new and shiny? Let's find out. First off, I'm sorry for the big gap between videos. I got a little busy over the last few months, but I am gonna try to keep these a bit more consistent moving forward. I honestly can't thank you guys enough for all the incredibly positive comments and support that I've received, even on the few videos I've put out so far. It really means a lot when I see those, so thank you. I will be doing a side-by-side comparison between the Rep X Pepins, which Coop has aptly dubbed the Repins, and the Nuobells. But I will be going into more detail on the Pepins just because there are already 6 million reviews about the Nuobells. This is my 5th set of adjustable dumbbells, so I do have quite a few to compare to. I started with badass dumbbells with the screw-on heads. It was all that was available at the start of COVID, and I was extremely grateful for them, but they are very slow and awkward to adjust. I briefly had a set of power blocks that weren't bad, and I know people love these, but I don't really get the hype. I find them a little too big and clunky, but they do adjust quickly. I had the Iron Masters for a long time and I really like them. They feel like a fixed dumbbell, and while they're much faster to adjust than badass, they're still not that fast. I used the Nuobells for almost a year, and I have to admit I was very impressed. I was fairly skeptical about their durability, but I love how quick they are to adjust. It does take a bit of cranking to go from min to max, but for smaller adjustments, this is the best system. The downside to this is that to get a heavier dumbbell, you need a longer handle because the rod has to retract inside of it, and that will eventually throw off the balance if it gets too big. They max out at 80 pounds, which seems to be the sweet spot between maximum weight and the shortest functionally balanced handle length. Realistically, 80 pounds is going to be pretty good for most people, but it will certainly limit a lot of you hulking beefcakes out there. And that brings us to these big boys. At 125 pounds with full steel construction, these are built to last. They have a super quick adjustable slider that's very satisfying to use, but it does have its limitations. They can be adjusted in 5-pound increments, but that does require these 5-pound adder weights, where the Nuobells have the 5-pound increments built right in. One of the best functional benefits of these is that the overall length is shorter than any other adjustable dumbbell at heavier weights. I think this is a big deal and a major advantage for the Pepins, and I'll demonstrate why that's so important a little later in the video. The max weight that these can go to is by far the most important difference and will probably be the deciding factor for most of you, so let's start with that. Nuobells max out at 80 pounds, although as a bonus, they do have a lighter starting weight of 5 pounds. Pepins start at 10 and go up to 125. One thing to note is that you can buy these at 85, 105, or 125. Of course, I had to buy the 125s because, as you can obviously tell, at 6'1", 260 pounds, I am an absolute unit. So I don't even bother doing lateral raises with anything less than 100 pounds. Now, a really smart thing the Rep has done when they started making these is to design a one-size adjustable cradle. So even if you buy the 85-pound set, it's the same handle, the same cradle, and you can upgrade them to 125 by purchasing the extra plates from Rep. You couldn't do that with the original version, so that's pretty great. Whew, that was a good set. On a serious note, I do like having the extra weight for dumbbell RDLs or dumbbell shrugs. Also, the idea of having a handle that goes up to 125 and not having all the weights on it would drive my mild OCD a little nuts. Based purely on maximum weight, Pepin is the obvious winner. But you already knew that going into this. Let's take a closer look at these. Full steel construction all around, including the cradle, so you can drop these and they'll be fine. So first thing to do is challenge that claim with the good old drop test. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Hell no, are you kidding me? I paid for these. I ain't dropping them. Look, I don't doubt the claim, but I'm not taking the risk. Besides, Rep already did a video where they dropped them off a 4-foot stack at an angle with only minor damage. And Gluck straight up threw them off his roof with only minor scratches, so I'll take their word for it. Having said that, I don't drop my weights, but I do like feeling that I can put them down hard without worrying about doing any damage. In contrast, I have seen some reviews on the Nuobells where even slamming them down a little bit at an angle can potentially break them. It hasn't happened to me, and I don't think it's as common as people make it out to be, but it's something to think about. The numbers are laser etched on the rail through powder coat on nickel, so really easy to read. And I know Coop was criticizing that they read opposite in different directions, like if these are upright, these are upside down, but I actually prefer that because it means that I can put them back in the cradle either way and it'll still look the same and be readable the same way. The two main points of potential failure for Nuobell are the thin metal ring around the first plate, which has been known to break if dropped at all, and the handle mechanism, which is entirely made of plastic. Now you can buy replacement handles for $150 Canadian, but nobody wants to be spending more money than they have to. My biggest concern with the long-term durability comes from the fact that there are all these plastic shavings building up on the edge of the cradle the more I use and adjust them. I mean, by definition, the fact that these plastic shavings are coming out means something inside here is wearing out and won't last. For build quality, Pepin wins. Jumping back to the cradle, I really like what Rep has done here over the original Pepins by making this adjustable if you want to upgrade your weight stack over time and start with the smaller one. The entire thing is made of steel with nice UHMW protection where it's needed, so you're not at any risk of cracking it if you slam them back in here as you consider giving up on life after a hard set of Bulgarian split squats. The Nuobell cradle hasn't caused me any issues, but it is straight up made of plastic, so I'm very careful when I put them back. Pepin wins again. Both of these can be adjusted in 5-pound increments, sort of. The difference is how they do it. Nuobells definitely have the advantage here as they just straight up go from 5 to 80 pounds as you crank the handle. The Pepins, unfortunately, have these external outer weights that you have to put on and take off. Again, sort of. Technically, you could make 5-pound adjustments just by putting an extra 5 pounds on one side, which will make it off balance, and that can be compensated for by moving your hand over a little. As the weight gets higher, the balance difference is less noticeable, but at the same time with higher weights, I want more stability, so I don't tend to do it this way. Having to add these extra plates is a bit annoying, but it's not that big of a deal. One complaint that I've seen is these little ring tabs sticking out and getting in your way, but honestly, I don't see the issue. It doesn't get in my way, but you do need to make sure that it's fully engaged so it doesn't fall out and hit you in the face when you're lifting. On the other side of things, technically the Pepins can go up in only 2.5-pound increments just by putting one of these on the end and not the other. I think they're working on 1 1/4-inch plates, and the toaster on the new dumbbell stand does have a slot for them, but I haven't seen any release information announced yet, and personally, I probably wouldn't bother getting them. For convenience, Nuobell wins this round. At first glance, and the way they like to show these off, it would look like Pepin has the clear advantage when it comes to adjustment speed, because you can go from 10 to 120 instantly, which is way faster than cranking from 5 to 80 on these. However, functionally, it's not quite that simple. Yes, doing this is much faster than doing this, but that's not how you're going to be using them. Most of the time, your adjustments are going to be smaller increments somewhere in the middle, and then accuracy is more important than speed. For example, let's go from 20 to 45 pounds. Couple of wrist pumps and you're finished. Now the Pepins. The slider moves really quickly, but it's not easy to get it to the exact spot, and you need to use both hands on each dumbbell, and sometimes I put it in the wrong hole. And then you still have to add on the outer weights. Now that was literally the longest change example that I could do, and it was still extremely quick and convenient. But that was a realistic comparison between the two, and on average, I am going to say the Nuobells are much faster. Is there a better way of doing this? Not that I can think of if you want a heavy adjustable dumbbell, so this is awesome. I've just never seen what I would consider to be a functionally accurate speed test, and so I wanted to demonstrate that. One small bonus for the Pepins, you can technically drop the weights outside the cradle for a quick drop set. So Pepins are faster for big adjustments, but Nuobell are much faster for small adjustments. Nuobell wins this one. Moving beyond convenience, let's talk about what it's actually like to work out with these, because I feel like that's maybe the most important part, assuming that's why you guys are buying them and not just as a fancy trophy to look at and never lift. I've said it before and I will begrudgingly say it again, when it comes to performance, size does matter. Look at this side-by-side comparison with each of these set at 80 pounds. At the same weight, the Pepins are much more compact. In fact, fully maxed out at 125 pounds, they're about the same size as 80-pound Nuobells. I'm going to use an incline press to demonstrate why that's so important, because in my opinion, the main benefit of a dumbbell press over a barbell press is the ability to lower the weight into a much deeper stretch than you can with a barbell, where the depth is limited by the bar hitting your chest. There's been a lot of research on this subject, and at this point, the literature strongly favors the idea that maximum tension in the most stretched position is ideal to maximize hypertrophy. So in the bottom position with Nuobells maxed at 80 pounds, I can get a good stretch, but this is about as far as I can go when they hit my chest. At the same 80 pounds, the Pepins are so much more compact that even though it might not look like a big difference in range of motion, I can get a much deeper stretch before they hit my shoulders. Now my range is only limited by the crippling arthritis in my elbows. This is a huge win for the Pepins. I think the handle size is going to come down to personal preference. The Pepins are 2 millimeters thicker at 34 mils, and the handle lengths are pretty similar. They both have knurling, but it's a little bit nicer and a bit more aggressive on the Pepins. My biggest issue is with the pop pins on the sliders and using wrist straps. I like using Versa grips on leg workout where I'm holding a weight isometrically for a long time, like heavy RDLs or high rep split squats or dumbbell lunges. I am not working my grip in those exercises, and I don't want it to be the limiting factor. The problem here is that in order to properly wrap the grips around, my knuckles will almost always knock that pop pin out of place. I wish it didn't stick out as much as it does, and I have seen a guy selling an upgrade kit on eBay to make this flush with the rail, so I'm not the only one here, but it's 100 Canadian dollars for a couple nuts and bolts. I do kind of hate this, because if I can't properly wrap the Versa grips around the dumbbells, they rotate a little bit during a heavy lift, and I find it really challenging to get them back in the cradle after an especially exhausting set. Beyond just a nuisance, I did have a set where the pin popped out and I didn't notice, so the rail slid out in the middle of a set. Now, fortunately, it didn't slide in, so the weight didn't fall off, but it was not secure. Now, I should have noticed that, of course, but it is something to be aware of. For an actual potential safety issue, I have not heard anybody else talking about this, but it's happened to me multiple times. I went to pull the dumbbell out of the cradle, not realizing that an extra 1 and sometimes 2 plates got stuck and came out when they shouldn't have. When it happens, I bang it in the cradle a couple times and they come loose. It's only happened a few times and I have no idea why it's doing it. I've tried adjusting the cradle. I have noticed that one of my sliders is not very smooth in the upper end of the weight range. So I don't know if I have a faulty handle. Maybe I have some plates that aren't quite cut perfectly. I don't know, but it's at least infrequent enough that I'm just gonna keep an eye on it and see what happens. Now that I've convinced you to buy them, let's talk about the price. There is a big price difference between these, especially for us Canadians. So you can buy Nuobells from Bells of Steel for $1,000, and certain colors regularly go on sale for $100 off. Shipping to me was about $100, so you're looking at $1,000 shipped plus tax. As always, Bells of Steel has a max shipping of $200 to anywhere in Canada, so you can save even more money if you're bundling it with something else. The Nuobell stand is actually pretty good for $200, although it's just a little taller than I would like it to be because I did lie about being 6'1" earlier in the video. I'm sorry. Pepins start at $16.30 for the 85-pound set, going up to $21.30 for the 125-pound set. Shipping to me was $150 to $200, which is actually still pretty reasonable coming from the US. So you're looking at roughly $1,800 to $2,300 Canadian. I did notice the price of both the dumbbells and the upgrade kit have gone up quite a bit since I bought them last year. So now it's more expensive to upgrade the weight later rather than buying it all at once. I do really like the dumbbell stand that Rep just came out with, but it cost $450 Canadian shipped. And it took so long for them to release it that I went and made my own for $42, and I made an entire video about it. So if you want to go check that out, it was really easy. So which one should you buy? the first thing to consider is how heavy you really need them to be. This is just my opinion, but I think 80 pounds will be enough for most people if you aren't benching, let's say 225 for 6 to 8 reps. And I can already hear the comments of, do you even lift, bro? Taking that to the next level of self-inflicted rage bait comments from the ego lifters, an even more controversial opinion of mine is, if you can't get the weight up yourself, it's too heavy for you. Once again, there is a ton of research on this subject, and it consistently shows that any range from 5 to 30 reps can be equally as effective at building muscle as long as those sets are taken within a few reps of failure under control. So there's absolutely no reason for anybody to be lifting a dumbbell that's so heavy you can't even get it into position if your goal is to build muscle. And anybody should be able to lift a dumbbell into position at a weight that lets them do 6 or more reps under control, or your form probably sucks in your ego lifting.
But wait!
I hear you asking, wait, what?
Well, what about power lifters and strength trainers who benefit from 1 to 3 rep sets? I bet you didn't even think of that, you dummy.
Oh, hey American Steve.
What's up, nerd?
Well, powerlifters generally aren't training max sets with dumbbell presses.
Well, you're small.
Yeah, well, I'm working on it. It takes time and I enjoy the process, so
I will own you.
In short,
You're short!
In short, there's no real reason why anybody needs to be maxing out a 1 to 3 rep set with dumbbells, so keep that in mind when deciding what you need. Now that half of you probably want to string me up for calling out ego lifters, just know that if you leave me a mean comment, I will probably fall asleep sobbing uncontrollably into my pillow tonight, so your move, internet tough guy. Okay, with that out of the way, the reason I bring that up is because if you think that 80 pounds is all you need, get Nuobells. At almost double the price, I just don't think the Pepins are worth it. You're buying the Pepins because they're a fast adjust dumbbell that goes heavy. Being droppable is a bonus. Unless you have the money to burn, then for sure go for them, they're great. But if 80 pounds isn't enough for you, and seemingly in contrast to what I said before, I think most intermediate lifters are going to want something heavier eventually. In which case I absolutely recommend these. The Pepins are what I'm going to be keeping going forward because they do go heavy. And I also really like how compact they are because I'm compact, so it works. Criticism aside, they're fun to use, they're solid as hell, they feel great, and if you need bigger dumbbells than this, you're an absolute beast, and I salute you. Let me know in the comments which one you prefer, and if you want to check out the Nuobells, please use the link to the Bells of Steel website below the like button. I don't have a link for Rep because I don't have an affiliate program in Canada, so just go buy them. Or maybe use an affiliate link from someone like Gluck's Gym. Thank you for watching. I will hopefully see you very soon.
So as they say in Canada, peace out.